And in fact, maybe we could just do our general introductions as folks are coming in. How about that? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, Maria, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So good morning. My name is Maria Edlund King. I'm at MTSU with the Center for Economic Education, and I apparently can't talk this morning. And I see that somebody has their hand raised, and I'm going to do my best to figure out how to get to you for that.
So Maria, I don't think that we can unmute anybody.
Right.
And so, and there's no chat within
the Zoom
true.
Session. So, yeah, y'all are going to have to put your questions over in the chat session for us.
Yeah. And I'm Jackie Morgan with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta Nashville branch, and we want to welcome you to From Bean to Cup, the business and economics of coffee. Let's do our disclaimer and get that out of the way. The views expressed are mine or those of the presenters each individually, and not necessarily those of the Atlanta Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve System, or Middle Tennessee State University. All right. Now that that's done, Maria, maybe what we should do first is show them, I'm going to share my screen to help everybody understand where the chat part is going to be. Okay. And, okay, so are you seeing the screen for the CTE page?
We are.
Okay, so what you should be seeing is this is where the chat is going to take place, the polls are, and then the files for download. So this is, so you almost, if you have two screens available, you'll need the two screens because on one, this is where all of our dynamic chat is going to hopefully take place. So this is where we're asking you to tell us, type in there, if you can get to that part, about where do you teach and what your name is and where do you teach so that we can have that to make sure that everybody's comfortable with that. And then go ahead and take care of one of the polls as well. And you can answer, we have two different polls that are out there that we'll get to shortly, but go ahead and take care of those for us. It might be a little bit of a challenge to navigate both, and if we have some issues, it's okay. We'll do our best to just kind of keep flowing with everything. Okay. And with that, let me share my other screen again. And Maria, you should be seeing our page for the PowerPoint.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. All right. So let's talk a little bit about our session and what's going to be involved with it today. So the main things we're going to try to cover in this 45 minutes that we have together, it's going to be fast, it's going to be serious because we have a lot to cover. So producing a cup of coffee, what all goes into that? We're going to look at trends. And so these are trends that are really going to be useful for you as you're teaching business marketing. If you happen to be teaching culinary arts, some really good information for you as well. And even if you're an ag teacher, there's some great things that I think that you'll find useful as well. We'll do an overview of the current economy because all of that ties back in with some great data related to restaurant industry, restaurant and hospitality, and also some things going on in coffee. And then finally, we'll end with some activities and resources that you can take directly from the classroom and use right away. Okay. Oh, good. We have folks who are signing in the chat room. Welcome, welcome. The meeting password, that is the one that we will, I think the code for the session we give out at the end. Christine, could you please get with Daniel Wilson and make sure if he is having issues getting in, he's asking for the meeting password.
Copy that.
All right. Great, thank you. And so, and a big thank you to Christine Thompson. She is being our room host for today and kind of taking care of some of the behind the scenes things to make sure that everything works wonderfully. So Maria, do you want to take it away with our first chat that we have here?
Sure. So one of the things we want you to put in the chat is we want you to list 5 to 10 things you think that go into getting your cup of coffee, from how that cup of coffee ends up in your hand at Jackie's favorite Starbucks on the way to the university in the morning. So if you all could make a list of that. And yes, we will make our slides available at the end. We have a Survey Monkey where you can put in your name and email and let us know how to send those to you.
In the files portion, there is a download that has some of the, all of the links that we're sharing with you today, the high level links, so that you'll have those readily available So that is out there, but like Maria said, we'll be getting the other to you after the session.
So Jackie, some of our responses so far include sugar, creamer, beans, water, coffee beans, cup, lid, creamer, sugar. Karen Setterquist put buy beans, grind, brew, pour, serve. I can tell all of you that are using creamer.
That's right, me included. So do we need to challenge them to think beyond the cup, to think further back in the process and think about the whole process potentially even?
There are, Kevin Welch shared that finding the farm, sourcing the beans, contracting with the farmer, importing the green coffee, roaster, purchasing of coffee, and roasting the beans and selling the beans. So Kevin thinks all the way back to that point that we're in the fields. So lots of good answers for that.
Excellent. And so we should point out that this is when we do our other workshop, we have you working groups, and to think about we're having your students do this as well. So working in small groups and having them think about all of these different points along the way. So Maria, are you ready for slide 5 to tell them what all these components are?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we think about that, it's not just it's kind of a thought activity, but it's also kind of leading us to all of the different parts of the industry that in our gross domestic product, when we talk about all the things that we produce in this country, all the activities associated with coffee. And those activities include importing, roasting, the sweeteners, all those ancillary goods, the whiteners, the flavorings, the maintenance of the machines. A lot of us don't think about that, but if you go into Thornton's in the morning and you get your cup of coffee, that big machine that's churning out 3 different flavors of coffee, has to be maintained. I got tickled because Stephen Weemus put, I don't drink coffee, but I make it for my wife. Get coffee mug, water and Keurig cups, vanilla sweetener dropper, half and half, stir and deliver. So Stephen is well trained in this coffee making process. So again, let me go back. Wages and taxes and induced spending by those working in the coffee economy. And this is one of the things when we do this as a full day workshop, we talk about is how this, selling the cup of coffee impacts all the rest of the community and how those dollars continue to flow when we talk about things like velocity of money. And then Jackie, if you'll go to the next slide.
Sure.
If you think about it, these numbers absolutely astounded Jackie and me when we discussed this, when we started on this workshop research process. Coffee related economic activity comprises 1.6% of the total GDP in 2015. And I know it's 2020, but 2015 data for this kind of very specific information is the most recent thing that's available. But think about that. 1.6% of our GDP is consumed by coffee and all its related activities. That's just a huge number and shows what's, the impact and how many of us, are just addicted to that cup. And then consumers in 2015 spent $74.2 billion on coffee. Billion with a B dollars on coffee. Okay. And then,
so Maria,
yes,
we're just going to pause for a minute.
Okay.
And there was a question that came up in the chat area that said, oh, are we using this chat and not the chat in Zoom? And that's right. There's no activated chat or polls within Zoom. So all of our chat and polls this morning will be within the main conference session area. So thank you for your flexibility for being able to go between the two with us this morning.
Absolutely. New technologies every time we turn around these days.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
so
Maria, this is where I need to give them a this is where I need to give them a reminder to please answer the poll question so that you can talk about the poll questions momentarily.
Okay, so let's give everybody just a second about that. So in the handout that we have under the files section, we have links to all of this data that we've gathered, and there are a lot more slides on demographic information that you can find there, and a lot of associated data with this. Okay.
Okay. So are you ready to share the poll results?
Yes. So let's look at what we got so far. So when we look at the poll, it says, who do you think drinks more coffee per day? And the vast majority of you think women drink more coffee, 66% to 34%. And the number for that goes across the entire US is actually that men drink more coffee by 0.2 cups. So they drink just a little bit more coffee than we do. And then Jackie, will you show the other poll question because we're showing the answer?
Absolutely. There we go.
Okay, so the other question, oh, you guys are very astute with the next question. Who spends more money on a cup of coffee? And why do you think that is? And Jackie, we'll let you answer this because we know your habit.
Oh, it's all the frou-frou coffees that we drink as women, right? We're not about just that plain black stuff. We have to have, as Stephen Williams described what he was making for his wife, that's the norm for a lot of women, I think.
Yeah, so a lot of those frappuccinos and ice stuff and everything, and it drives up the cost of your cup. And then women tend to go to places like Starbucks more because they do have those kinds of cups of coffee available. And if you look at this graphic that Jackie has up, we spend, oh, I'm sorry, I can't read it. $2,327 annually on coffee, while men spend $1,934. And Brittany is absolutely right. Starbucks costs a lot. Yeah, so y'all are on that. Steven says he buys his at home, but he goes and buys it on Amazon, so it costs him time. And a few people do not drink coffee. Okay, all right. So from there, let's go ahead and look at the demographics of a coffee drinker. And we don't have a poll for this, but we thought that this was interesting information. We have this, of course, I expected, and I see that, that the 60 plus generation drinks more. Part of that is because, you know, if you think about it, 60 plus is post World War II. Oh my gosh, I am getting to be so old. So 60, 40, that'd be 1960. So yeah, still a lot of that post to people. My granddaddy, he woke up in the morning wanting his cup of coffee in his hand. But then the unexpected thing that we're seeing in those trends is the 25 to 39-year-olds. They have surged ahead, and that has gotten to be their thing. I think, personally, a lot of that has to do with, excuse me, a lot of that has to do with the social aspect of drinking a cup of coffee. Jackie and I've talked about a lot that you know, before we were confined to home, we always met somewhere and had coffee. That was just how that was part of the whole meeting thing. So Jackie's in this demographic. I moved on to the next one for age, but you know, we thought it was interesting that this millennial generation, the Gen Zs, not so much, although they're a lot higher than I thought. 47% of them drink coffee. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about, Jackie, you want to talk about the what's hot since you discovered this hot information?
Yeah. So let's talk about what's hot. And so this is from the National Restaurant Association. So some of you joined us either last summer at the CTE Institute when we talked about holiday economics. And there we shared with you the National Retail Federation and the data that they have. So this is the restaurant version of the National Retail Federation. So the things to keep in mind as you're looking at this are the things that we mentioned last year as well. use caution when you're looking at the data. The data is accurate, good information. We feel solid about that. But it could be through the lens of the restaurant industry, right? So think about that as you're looking at this. So let's look at some of the things. They've got a great report. We've pulled out a few of the highlights that focus on our coffee topic to be able to look at today. So one of the things that they said, there's these three big areas that we pulled from that relate to coffee. So one is, let's look at the first part there. It says culinary innovations, CBD infused. And so actually the graphic that's on the page that they shared was CBD infused coffee, potentially that as a trend. Some of the other things you can see in there, things that are scratch made, stress relievers, and then the other lifestyle things, and then Instagrammable fare. And I want you to remember that part because we will come back to that in just a moment and give you some highlights from a local coffee shop of how they're doing some of these things, okay? The non-alcoholic beverages, so some of the things like oat milk as it ties into coffee, and then off premises. And remember, this report came out in January 2020. This was pre-COVID. And so all of those things that we're looking at that are pre-COVID here, they were already talking about creativity with catering, delivery-friendly menu items. That had already come up, packaging upgrades, the meal plans. And so all of those things that we saw during COVID becoming very relevant were things that were already on the horizon. Let's go on to slide 13. In slide 13, we're looking at that oat milk trend. So there's a restaurant in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, close to MTSU that I frequent sometimes, and it's called Brass Horn Coffee. Opened in the fall, and already we're going to show you some things that they have that tie into this as well. So you can see there, we're showing you that they're doing the oat milk thing that was already on their menu as an option. Another area, Instagrammable fare. I mean, look at the things that they're posting on Instagram and Facebook. Beautiful pictures. I mean, who doesn't want to drink that, right? It just is, it's beautiful. So they post their new drink alerts and they do a great job of making things look really great. And then the off-premises thing. So one of the things that they have there, the first one's the delivery-friendly menu items. So they're showing the things that can be to go through DoorDash or curbside pickup. And then the restaurant meal plans and kits. So the meal plans is not just about getting something from your local restaurant. Even the coffee shops are getting into that because you can take home this and enjoy it, your lattes, and enjoy it over ice. So that's just a show of some of the trends and how some of our local business is actually implementing some of those things as well. Okay, Maria, anything else about trends before we dive in for an overview of the economy?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the fact that the Federal Reserve, the BLS, all those places that collect this sort of data about employment, one of the things that we're kind of anticipating happening, and it's a lot of chatter around the university, is this shift in employment with what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because like Jackie showed you, this delivery friendly menu and these restaurant meals and kits. So, you know, they showed in one of those little graphics, Jackie, if you'll go back to that last slide, down
Sure.
at the, yes,
this
ma'am.
one?
Down at the bottom, you see that little thing that looks like a cup carrier, but it's all the things you need to mix together to make one of those frou cups of coffee in a to-go thing. And it's something that's kind of come about in this delivery time that we've really gotten dependent on delivery and whatnot. And we don't think that's going to go backwards. We think people will continue to ask for that sort of stuff. So it's kind of changing the way we think about our industries for those of you that are in business and marketing and entrepreneurship. And you know, we've certainly had the entrepreneurial spirit come forth as we've adapted to being at home and not in contact with each other, and things you never thought possible. I never thought I could get a Frappuccino without touching a human being, but turns out you can. So just interesting trends in how we're reallocating our labor as we go forward.
Absolutely. So as we think about more trends, one of the trends we have to look at is actually looking at some of the data related to the economy. And I think this is applicable no matter what you're teaching, because it ties in with, so the trends that we've looked at, the things that you're teaching in your classrooms for marketing, business, for agriculture, for culinary, for all of these things, will tie back to some of this basic economic data that help drive making business decisions. So let's get started. The National Restaurant Association, again, the one who did the trends data for us, shared our Tennessee restaurant industry at a glance. This was pre-COVID, of course, but they're saying basically that the restaurant industry is big bucks in Tennessee, as it is every place. So $14.2 billion in estimated sales in Tennessee's restaurants in 2018. 330,000 jobs, so 11% of the employment of the state. So big numbers that we're seeing there. Okay, Maria, any other observations from this page?
No, not from that one. Let's go ahead and look at the headlines real quick.
Great. So here's what we want to do is, this is another one from the Restaurant Association, and these are some headlines that they have. They have a page that actually has that on there. When we send you the PowerPoint, you can actually go and look at those headlines using the link at the bottom there. And so some of the headlines back from May 15th, restaurant sales fell to their lowest real level in over 35 years. June 5th, restaurant employment is starting to rebound from the historic losses. Okay? June 16th, restaurant sales remain well below normal levels despite May uptick. July 2nd, restaurants added 1.5 million jobs for the second consecutive month. Now remember, this is national numbers, but we want you in the chat box, and I just put in there, to write the next headline. So if you were writing the next headline, what would it be?
So kind of what she's looking for is, where do you think we're going? Do you think we're still on this upward trend, or do you think it's not? If I feel that blank in too much, I'm giving you answers.
Okay, so Lisa says restaurant sales improving, coffee booming, many small restaurants close. Yeah, I think that Karen, you're observant there, that I think a lot of our small businesses are continuing to struggle, most definitely, and big businesses as well. So I think we will continue to see a lot of the things that you are saying exactly here. More people cooking at home. Certain sales are up. Yeah, absolutely. Maria, anything that caught your eye?
Yeah, so one of my colleagues has an article published just this past Saturday. It's actually on WZTV's website. It's Dr. Ken Blake. He's a data journalism professor, and he's been looking at Google and their mobility trend reports. And it's very interesting how we can see, analyze behaviors just from looking at where Google's tracking us to. So for those of you that are like me and you have on your GPS all the time, they don't specifically look to see where you are, but they do look to see where large numbers of people are. And one of the very interesting observations that he made looking at this latest set of data from Google for the first half of July is that July the 4th, the numbers plummeted, which we kind of expected. We don't tend to eat out a lot July the 4th. Everybody goes home and barbecues, but one of the kind of things that has been surprising is that the trend upward to going back to restaurants has not continued after July the 4th. As a matter of fact, he said, the run up to the 4th marks some of the best days shops and restaurants in Tennessee have had since the lockdown. How the spike appears to be temporary, plummeting and returning to levels below those from before the pandemic began. So back to pre-pandemic lows. So that upward trend just kind of stopped. Part of it is due to some of the new restrictions that got put in place. And then some of it said, one of the interesting things he indicated was that we're used to seeing low numbers in restaurants in July. I'm not sure why that is, but we're used to seeing that, but they're even lower than number. So for those of you that observe that these small restaurants aren't making it, they're back to struggling again because of that.
So Maria, and a lot of that, and I've talked to our folks at some local restaurants, so Tasty Table and Simply Pure Sweets, two of our friends who, those of you who came to our in-person economics and business last summer that we did, where we visited some small businesses, they've told us that they generally struggle during July anyway. People are traveling on vacation. So, and they're both located in downtown Murfreesboro. So those normal people who would come and leave, for example, the bank that might be downtown and walk over and get lunch, or the lawyer's office, they might be on vacation. So especially those local places, it'd be interesting to do a comparison between tourist areas versus like the regular small town areas during this time of year as well. Okay. All right, so let's keep moving along then. I think you all have had some great headlines, and you can see how this activity could definitely be used for this particular topic or something else in your classroom as well, especially for those marketing folks thinking about how are they going to tell the story. That's a great activity, I think, to easily implement. Okay. So another headline that they've given us is the National Restaurant Association has some data that they post on a regular basis, and they look at total eating and drinking place sales. So all restaurants, bars, everything is lumped into here, and you can see how everything was pretty steady, and then March came along and things just went down from there. So March, April at a major low, and then back up a little bit in May. So we're starting to see the upward climb again. And then when they did a survey that was from the very beginning of April, and you can see they've looked at these different categories, and over towards the right, the second from the right, is coffee and snack. And what they're looking at here is the percent, the blue is the percent of operators that reported lower sales versus the same time in 2019. And then the red is the decline in sales during the period between April 1 and April 10. And you can see huge declines. Definitely, like everybody who's in coffee, 96% said, yes, we've seen a decline since 2019. And all are seeing sales that are about 73% lower. Okay. So let's look at our next slide then. And here we have, oh, before we go to that, let's just go back here. Maria, anything about sales trends?
No, I think we addressed it in the last part.
Okay, great. We did have a question in the chat area that said, is the PowerPoint available for our use in the classrooms? Yes, we're happy to share our slide deck with you. At the end of the session today, we're going to give you a SurveyMonkey link. If you fill that out with your name, your school, your email, on Wednesday, we'll send those out to everybody. Okay. So now we're ready for our next poll question, but it's not going to be in the polls. It's going to be in the chat. And so we have 4 different options up there for you without using your resources. What do you think the current U.S. unemployment rate is for June 2020? And this is the generally reported rate that's out there. You can put A, B, C, D, whatever you think the current rate is. And we're looking at the national rate at this point, and not the Tennessee rate. We'll get to both. Maria, it looks like we have a split group.
Yeah, y'all are.
It looks like I'm not seeing very few A's, lots of B's, C's, and D's.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll give another second for those.
Rolling through all the responses as quick as they come in.
Yeah. Great. And thank you all for your flexibility in using the chat area. And again, this one is not in the poll area. This is just in, so option A is 9.7%, option B 11.1%, option C 13.3%, and option D is 18%. The current U.S. unemployment rate, and I think let's go ahead and reveal the answer. So the current U.S. unemployment rate is actually, what was that? That was B, wasn't it? So you can cheer for yourself at this point, you know, feel good about things if you got that answer right. Not cheering for unemployment, of course, but cheering that you got the answer right. Let's be clear about that. But 11.1, in May, the number was 13.3%. So we saw a little bit of an improvement there for the overall unemployment rate. In Tennessee, we were actually below the national average. So our rate was 9.7 for June. Oops, and I got an error there. Let me fix that real quick. That should be June. And May 2020 was 11.3%. The data for, the reason that was wrong was the data for June just became available on late Friday that we were able to add that in there. Okay. So when we look at the screen here and see the map, this is one of my favorite maps that's available through the Bureau of Labor Statistics because it's a great visual that looks at, you can see the dark colors is where there's high levels of unemployment. The lighter colors is where there's lower levels of unemployment. So in addition to being able to get this data just for the United States, you can also, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has this available for Tennessee as well. And so that way you can go in and look county by county at the data. Maria, your perspectives on this?
Just a reminder that those of you that have been in workshops with us that where we look at this employment data in detail, remember that this is U3 data. So this doesn't include the discouraged workers, the partially employed for economic reasons, and those people that are underemployed. So in a job that's misallocated for their resources. So if you look at U6, remember that the number, I think right now is trending closer somewhere to 17% for the US. So it's just a little bit higher. Well, more than a little bit, but it's up higher. But this is the classic data that we look at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's keep moving on because we are at 10:02, so that means we have less than 15 minutes with you to finish up. So the other points that we want to make is, again, this is some data that was tracked by the Federal Reserve using some of our resources that we have available. And so back in March, you can see the big drop that's there is showing for leisure and hospitality and jobs going down, 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 down. And we actually had to create a second slide for April because the comparison, the number comparisons became so much different. So you can see the humongous drop from that March down to April, and then May, well, in May showing upward growth just a little bit because it's month over month comparisons that we see there. Okay. And then again, National Retail Association shared with us some of their data. So again, exactly what we saw from the past two slides. Smaller, huge drop, bump up a little bit, okay? And then when we look at slide number 27, this is the survey that they did with their folks that are in the restaurant industry to look at, it was at the beginning of April, so looking at the trends since the outbreak and the percentage of operators that had to lay off people or furlough them in blue, and the reduction in staff that they had. And again, coffee and snacks is the second from the right-hand side, okay? So you can see that their losses, 74% had to lay off, and then 80% reduction in staff. Crazy, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah, so that's
and
what
Maria,
Amber commented, how much COVID impacted leisure and hospitality. And yeah, that was absolutely the industry hit the hardest because we weren't traveling, we weren't getting on cruise ships, we weren't going to Disney World, and we weren't going to the bars downtown. You know, all of that just, it didn't just trickle off, it was boom and it was closed. So it has a huge impact on our economy.
Yeah. One of the things that we're not showing in here, just because we had, is the part that talks about like, so we're seeing this side. We're not even seeing the producer side at this point, right? So the impact on, we've seen all of the milk having to be dumped because there's no market for it, or all of the things with all of the other products, or the supply chain issues. That's a whole nother segment that we don't have time to cover today. So we're getting to just the pieces that we have time for today. We do have another webinar that we do, that we actually did we were going to do this as a full day workshop. but had to transition it to 2 webinars. And so we're going to be repeating those in the fall. So we'd love to have you join us to look more at some more of the data, some things related to fair trade for coffee, and just get an update. Okay. All right. So Maria, let's go on to our next poll question that's actually going to be in the chat area about, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about the current economy? 1 is not very confident and 5 is very confident. So put that in the chat area for us. How do you feel about the current economy? 1 to 5. 1 being not confident, 5 being pretty confident.
Well, all the optimists chimed in up front. Seeing lots of 3s, some 4s. Those 5s were
Maria,
right.
I think we're averaging
3.
I think we're averaging out to about 3 is what it looks like, middle of the pack.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you want me to go on to consumer confidence?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that.
You can talk about that?
Talk a little bit about what that data means actually. So the consumer confidence is gathered by the hang on a second. Sorry. Conference board. It comes out of Michigan, and they literally poll 5,000 households and ask them the questions. Not any more complicated, really, questions than what Jackie asked you to respond to over in the chat section. They asked general U.S. household people, so not economists, not academics, you know, unless they just happen to be in one of the 5,000 households that gets answered. They asked them to respond to 5 different questions. How they feel about the current business conditions, the business conditions for the next 6 months, and the current employment conditions. So those first 3 questions are a set of data that they collect and kind of look at present situation. And then the last 2 questions ask about employment conditions for the next 6 months and total family income anticipated for the next 6 months. So how good do you feel about that? Nothing technical at all, but it does give us a sense of how people are feeling about it. And, you know, one of the things you might ask yourself is, well, what possible difference does that make? But it does make a difference, because the government can hand out $1,200 to everybody all day long, but if you're in one of those families where you're not feeling confident about the economy, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go out and spend that. You know, part of that reasoning for giving out that money was, 1, to help people replace income to pay those basic bills, but the other reason was to help people stimulate the economy by spending it somewhere. And we really don't have a good picture yet of how effective that was. But that's one of the reasons that we, you know, cut taxes when we're trying to stimulate the economy and whatnot. And it's based partially off this data that we collect from the Consumer Confidence Board. And as you can see in this graph that Jackie has up, the present situation is in the blue, and then the expectations are in the orange or dark yellow, depending on your screen. But if you look right there, April, the end of the first quarter, start of the second quarter, look at this number. I'm pointing and realize you all can't see. Look at the plummet that happened for what the situation was. I mean, just an absolute plunge down in terms of confidence. And then if we look, the next few slides have a copy of the FOMC report, which is the Federal Open Market Committee. And they look at a full range of tools. And these are the people that help make the decision about interest rates in terms of what's going to be set for banks to borrow from each other as they target the federal funds rate and that sort of stuff. And it says that the coronavirus outbreak is causing tremendous human and economic hardship. We've seen sharp declines in economic activity and surge in jobs. And then it goes on, and we just shared the next 2 slides with you to share with your students. And this FOMC statement's updated every month, right, Jackie?
It's every 6 weeks. We meet every 6, our Federal Open Market Committee meets every 6 weeks. the one thing I really want to make sure that everybody notices on here is that we are clear to recognize that this was a public health crisis that's brought on an economic situation, right? And so understanding that this is much different than what we experienced back in the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, 2010 timeframe, right? Much different scenario that we have there. That was a financial crisis. This is a public health crisis. Okay. But it doesn't make the economic situation any easier. Okay. All right, and so in our last couple of minutes here, let's go on to, Maria, do you want to mention the lesson? We've listed a couple of activities and resources. These are on the file that we have, and then again, we'll send this slide deck to those of you who share your information with us. Do you want to mention the hands-on trade simulation?
Sure, so this is from high school economics, and if and like Jackie said, there's a link on the handout where you literally you have a market for coffee beans, and it's a great way to teach supply and demand. You just, half of the room is buyers, half the room is sellers. Coffee beans, whole coffee beans is a great visual for your students. I put a bunch in a Ziploc bag so that half the class had a Ziploc bag full of coffee beans, and the other half, I actually gave them styrofoam coffee cups when I did this, that just so they had something in their hand. And then we've given you a copy of the sample card and the rules for this game to use, but there's several rounds of it, and you can create great graphs in Excel if you all would like that Excel sheet. Make a note of that in the survey that Jackie and I are going to send you, and we can share that out as well. And then Jackie, with 1 minute, you want to share about the infographics?
Yeah, so just again, we have these great free posters that are available, and then we now have a new activity book. So there's activities that go along with every single poster, and you can order that online. And so the link for that is in the PowerPoint here, but we've also included it on the file slide. So be sure to go online, get your new activity book, order the posters so you can use those in the classroom. It's a good 4-letter word. It's free, so be sure to check that out. And then be sure to check out our other resources. Maria Econ EdLink is tied to her Center for Economic Education, and federalreserveeducation.org is tied to the Federal Reserve and me. I do want to put in the chat area the link for doing the SurveyMonkey. Let's go ahead and send that. And that way you can go out there and complete that SurveyMonkey, and we will send you the slide deck. The other thing I want to mention is stop by the virtual exhibit booth. I will be there on Monday and Tuesday. My colleague Jeanette will be there on Wednesday and Thursday. Not sure who will be there on Friday. But stop by and see us. I'm told that we will have Zoom opportunities, so you can come and we can chat and answer any questions that you might have. And Maria, did the survey thing show up in chat? Because it's still kind of stuck on my end.
It is totally locked up on my side too, so I'm afraid not.
Okay, so, well, hopefully some of you can see it there. If you want to write down these letters, so it's surveymonkey.com, and that's a /, isn't it? Yes, it's /R/BX9, D as in dog, T as in Tom, Q as in Queen, G as in general. And so hopefully that can go through the, since we're not able to post it there. And, but I think that will conclude our session for today. You should be able to see the session code on the page. It is L as in Larry, 6, N as in Nancy, D as in David, 8. And that should be, there we go. Yep, and so the code word is there. Okay, so we will hang tight for a few more, but we know that this is the end of our time. So thank you all for joining us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Maria directly. Yeah, so the session code, I'm assuming that's the code that the Department of Education gave us to give out. So I'm assuming that that is what you will use, the L6ND8 number. And it should be showing on the screen. But again, the session code, L as in Larry, the number 6, N as in Nancy, D as in David, and the number 8. They're asking for a keyword. Okay, so hang tight. Maria, do you want to check that email that I sent you to see if there's another keyword? Christine, do you know? They said it's not the same. The code shows automatically.
Yes, the keyword is academy, A-C-A-D-E-M-Y, academy.
Oh, thank you. I did not have that. So thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
So academy, let's put that in there. Sorry, everybody, for the confusion. And with that, we hope you have a great rest of the conference. We will hang tight for a few more in case you have any additional questions. And come by and see me at the exhibit today. And again, the keyword is academy, and I'm putting it into the chat area, and we've changed it on the screen also. And thanks to all of you for participating today and actively engaging. That was, I think everybody did great in the chat area today. What do you think, Maria?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Karen has a question about where do you put it? Can somebody put in the chat where Karen needs to put her keyword? Because I don't know the answer. Christine, do you know where she needs to put the keyword?
Not off the top of my head, but I am reviewing my notes.
Okay, and again, the keyword, the session code is academy. Oh, and Stephen says, scroll down below the chat. It's in the survey. Very good. Thank you all for your help. Select take survey. Yes, okay, so the survey link is over to the bottom left of the page. And I'm told that's what they're saying is that you put that, the session code. Yeah, April, you're right. And I think somebody else put this too, that the keyword should have been coffee. We didn't get to pick our word because obviously it would have been that had we got to pick it.
Hey, Jackie, did you go ahead and repost the Survey Monkey since it unlocked?
Yeah, let me go ahead and put that in there again for our slide deck. You can fill out the Survey Monkey. Let me do this. I'm trying. It's kind of being kind of slow. I'm doing it as two separate things. I put for slide deck and then there's the link.
You got it.
There we go. And I know this will kick us off of here in just a few minutes, but I just want to hang tight in case anybody else has problems.
Thanks, Kathy.
I missed getting to see faces today, but it's good to have so many familiar names on there.
It is not required for credit, Ron, just if you want the slide deck, the PowerPoints.
Yep.
Oh, Ron, send me an email, maria.king@mtsu.edu.
So Cindy, if you need to, Cindy, if you're still on, if you need to send one of us an email, we can be sure to add you to the list since it's spinning. So if anybody wants to send us a message that you want the slide deck, if you can't get into the Survey Monkey, just send us an email and we'll add you to the list. Not a problem. Christine, thank you so much for your help today.
You're welcome. It was effortless to support you all because you really have your stuff together.
We do this a lot.
We had 272 on our last one.
Yeah. It was just figuring out how to manage the chat area and the Zoom stuff, but once we figured that out, not a problem.
Thank you, Royce. It was good to see you again.
To see again, right?
Oh, yeah, well, as close as we're going to get these days.
It is as close, I know.
Kimberly, yes, absolutely. I am. Okay, we're about ready to end, Mrs. Morgan.
I think so. We'll just, you want to hang tight for like one more minute because I think this it'll kick us out at 10:25, but we can just kind of hang tight until 23 to make sure nobody else has any questions.
Okay.
Oh, and in fact, we could probably get out of here because I don't know if the chat stays live or not.
I believe it does.
Okay, so let's stop this.
Great, and I'm just going to put
there is no automatic way to save the chat. So if you wanted to save the chat, you would have to copy and paste it into another Word document.
Okay.
Sure. That was strange. Mine just went black.
They're tired of us.
All right. So I think so. Oh, there we go. There it is again. I just wanted to. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and close out then. All right. Again, thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you all.